Hello, and welcome to another episode of Problem Solved. I'm James Swisher, Director of Continuing Education for IISE. We have a unique episode rooted in history, chance, and the 2022 Applied Ergonomics Conference in Orlando, where a keynote speaker and a conference attendee discovered an important connection that ties the two through decades past. So, Mike, Eric, you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Okay, I guess I'll go first. My name is Mike Ha. I'm the Senior EHS Manager for Abbott, and I'm responsible for global ergonomics and fleet safety for the vascular division. And we have manufacturing sites and sales office and sales personnel. Let me start that over, okay? We have manufacturing sites and sales office and sales personnel in many parts of the world. And my responsibility is for the safety and ergo at their workplaces and on the road also.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being with us today, Mike. Eric, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I'm Eric Fowler. I'm a retired Air Force chief with about 27 years experience. But I've been involved in ergonomics for about 12 years. I worked for a DoD contractor, Ceres Engineering Services, and we support Robins Air Force Base in the aircraft depot arena. I run a team of 4 ergonomic technicians, and we do roughly about 800 ergonomic assessments a year. So we stay pretty busy for a team of 4.
That sounds like you stay very busy. That's awesome, Eric. Thanks for being part of today's episode and for joining us.
Wow.
Mike, I'm going to start with you. At your keynote at the conference, you talked to us about what it was like growing up in Vietnam and what led you to the U.S. Would you mind, for those who weren't at the conference or listening to the podcast, would you mind sharing a little bit of that story with us?
Sure. I grew up in Vietnam with my parents and my 2 sisters. One is older and one is younger. And I lived in Vietnam until I was 13 years old. The war was going on, but we lived a peaceful and prosperous life. I went to one of the best schools in Vietnam and had a lot of friends and activities. So we really never saw the war except for one time in 1968 where the communists attacked South Vietnam and during the Tet Offensive, which was the Vietnamese New Year. So, but South Vietnam survived that and we continue on. But then the communists in 1975, in the spring of 1975, again attacked South Vietnam. And South Vietnam was losing the war, and everyone was trying to escape. So one of my father's American friends agreed to help take me out. He couldn't take the whole family, so he agreed to just take me out. And we left on one of the last flights out of Vietnam. We barely made it out because the next day after I left, the communists bombed the runway, and they couldn't take off anymore. But 2 days later, then South Vietnam fell and the war ended. The thing, as part of my story, I told about getting on a C-130 transport plane from the U.S. military. It's the workhorse of the U.S. military in carrying troops and supplies and things like that. It normally carries, I think, about 90 troops, but on that flight, on that fateful flight, early in the morning, I think there were more than 300 of the refugees on the plane.
Wow.
And again, I was the only one of my family to escape Vietnam at that time. I told this story as part of my speech and at the Applied Ergo Conference in March. And I think that's how my connection with Eric started. So.
That's awesome, Mike. And then after you got to the U.S., you wound up with a career in ergonomics. How did you wind up in ergonomics? How did you wind up at Abbott?
Yeah, I started school at Texas A&M in 1979 and graduated in 1983. And then with a degree in industrial engineering. So I started working with Hager Apparel Company in Dallas, and then eventually got to work with Johnson & Johnson 5 years after that. So when I started working with Johnson & Johnson in Arlington, Texas, just outside of Dallas, they needed someone to work with the ergonomics program. And since I had the industrial engineering background with the human factor courses and things like that, I was asked to be the company ergonomics coordinator, and that's when I started doing ergonomics. That was trying to think, maybe 1988. That's when I started it, doing ergonomics, and I was with J&J for 20 years. After that, I joined Abbott, and that's how I got started in ergonomics. And during my career, I got additional degree, Master of Industrial Engineering, with the emphasis in safety and ergonomics. And also I got board certifications with the professional ergonomics certifications.
Wow. Quite a journey, Mike. I mean, from being on that plane with 300 people, just making it out on time, to the career and the experiences that you've had, man, it's really inspiring.
It's been quite a ride.
It has.
and during my journey, I got on the C-130, and then I got on the C-141, which was a bigger plane, and we flew that from, I think, Hawaii to Fort Chaffee, Arkansas. That was the refugee camp that the U.S. Army had set up for us.
Wow. And I think you're still doing things to help your native land. You're still you've got a program to help donate safety helmets to children in Vietnam. Is that right? Yeah.
And I have been helping with charity to help the children of Vietnam. I've been doing that for more than 20 years. In 1990, I got to go back to Vietnam to see my parents and my sisters for the first time after 15 years. Vietnam was closed off, and it was horrible. The communists made everybody equal, but equally poor. So we didn't, family didn't have enough food to eat.
Right.
They had to sell off their belongings and their homes and just to survive. But in 1990, I got back to Vietnam and saw them for the first time. And, during that trip, I saw so many children in the street suffering. And I made a promise at that time that I would, when I have the opportunity, to come back and help the children of Vietnam. So I got hooked up with a charity called Project Vietnam, and we go back on medical missions twice a year and provide medical services, surgeries, and things like that for the children and the poor of Vietnam. So, when I joined Abbott back in 2008, that was the start of my career at Abbott. And 8 years ago, they started a program to provide helmets to the school children, the young school children, elementary school children, in very poor areas of Vietnam or In the suburban area, we pick the schools that are high risk in terms of traffic. They got major highway going through there and trucks and things like that. So, and the school children of Vietnam, they don't have quality helmets. They have substandard helmets that they buy off, the stores, and they're not designed to protect the head of the children when they fall in cases of crashes. So, so Abbott started this program 8 years ago, and because I was fluent in Vietnamese, I was asked to be the first contingent to go back to Vietnam and get the program rolling. So, we have done that every year, except for the last few years because of the pandemics. But since that time, we've given out 40,000 helmets to school children, and it's really a program that I love because it's basically combined my two passion of helping the children and also safety. So that was just a perfect program for me to be involved with, and we're hoping that we can restart that program, very soon once the pandemic is over.
Absolutely. That's really fantastic, Mike. It has to be so rewarding to be able to give back like that, and in a way that fits the way your career has gone from a safety perspective.
Right.
Yeah, that's really awesome. What a story, man. So I don't want our listeners to forget the first part of that story when Mike boarded the C-130. Don't forget that part, because we're going to come back to that. But we're going to take a quick detour and learn a little bit more about how these stories interconnect. We're going to start with Eric. Eric Fowler, thanks for being with us today. So you've got an interesting story to tell us too, right? So you were in the Air Force and have had a long career and now a career in ergonomics. Tell us a little bit about your background, what led you into the military, and what led you into a career in ergonomics.
Well, coming in the military, I was living in New Orleans and loving New Orleans, loved working in restaurants. But that was back in the early 80s when the oil industry kind of took a nosedive, and a lot of the restaurants in New Orleans closed down. So I had bills to pay. And so I looked at the military, and I was a military brat, so I understood military. And the door opened, and I joined the Air Force. And when I joined, I made a commitment to myself that I was going to stick it out for at least 20 years. And it ended up being right under 27, and had a great career. Traveled the world, didn't get a chance, Mike, to go over to Vietnam. The closest I think I got was Hawaii. So, but traveled all over the world, raised a family, 3 boys, and finished my career here in Georgia in the military. And great career. But I look back on my military career and I was like, what did I really enjoy doing? And it was a time in my life where I was starting a second career. And what really excited me was helping people. As I progressed in rank and made my rank and became the chief enlisted manager, it was all about taking care of people and managing resources. And so when I started my civilian career, I wanted to do something to help people. And so I started working in a nonprofit, just helping the poor here in Middle Georgia. And then a gentleman one day at church stopped me, and he was building his ergonomic program up on the Air Force Base. And he stopped me because he knew my background and he knew me. And he says, hey, he says, I'm building up my ergonomic program. He says, would you be interested? And I was like, what's ergonomics? I had no idea. I had no idea what ergonomics was. All my military career, I was in logistics, but I took care of facilities. I did process improvement. I did safety. So I did ergonomics. I just didn't know what ergonomics was. And he looked at me that day And he says, it's helping people.
Oh, that's a great answer.
And when he said that, James, I knew it was the right place for me. So I came on board and helped build up the ergonomic program here at Robins Air Force Base. I've been helping people. I've been helping what we refer to as the warfighter. We're trying to get these planes back in the air so they can help the warfighter downrange. And I've been impressed all these years with the workforce here at Robins, because they'll take an aircraft like the C-130, they'll take it down to bare bones and rebuild it and restore it. And when you see them flying, you just have to appreciate the artisans here, in Middle Georgia. And I have an opportunity to help make sure that their work areas are safe and ergonomically friendly. And
that's wonderful.
So it's been a great career for me. I couldn't ask for a better second career in my season of life that I'm in right now. And I'm just very thankful that gentleman that had the vision to start an ergonomic program at Robins asked me to join him. We're the only ergonomic program in the Air Force.
Wow.
So we're kind of unique when it comes to having a full-fledged with an operating budget ergonomic program.
Wow, that's incredible. Gosh, thank you for your service to our country, and thank you for your service at Robins. I'm glad he was able to convince you that ergonomics was a worthwhile career.
I tell you, all he had to say was it's helping people.
Yeah.
And that's kind of reinforced to me almost every day, working in this career field.
That's awesome. Well, you mentioned that one of the fleets that your team maintains, coming full circle back to Mike, you guys maintain the C-130s, right? Yes,
sir, we do. And actually, the C-130 actually came into the Air Force Inventory back in 1958. So, we go back to 1975, Mike, when they were flying out of Vietnam. They've been in service for a while, and you're absolutely right. The C-130 is the workhorse for the Air Force and has moved millions of tons of cargo and passengers, and it's still doing it today. When Mike and I were talking, he mentioned the C-141, and the C-141 was actually maintained here at Robins Air Force Base too, and it had a 40-year life expectancy. And Mike, I didn't know it at the time when we were talking at the conference, but it was 2006 when the C-141 actually retired. So after you flew on it, it still had a long lifespan, right? So from 75 to 2006. So the C-141 had a long lifespan. But the 130 is still going strong.
It's amazing. I was reading the other day that, I think it's a C-130J now, right? And it's they've gone through so many iterations. And, as you said, it started during the Korean War, and now we're into the Ukraine War, and it's, 80 years later, and it's still running. So.
Yeah. Well, one of the questions that you asked me, Mike, and I didn't have the answer, and I'm sure you remember, but it really struck a chord with me, because it was a memory that you carried ever since you were on that 130 flying out of Saigon, and you asked me about the ramp being open. Mm-hmm. Do you remember?
Yep.
And I didn't know. Can you mention that? And then I'll just kind of let you know what I found out since then.
Okay.
Can you share that memory? That was an awesome memory.
Yeah. When I talked to you, I think we made the connection because of the C-130, but I think also because of our appreciation for the U.S. military and the sacrifices that our brave men and women in the armed forces that help not only with the military side of it, but also the human nature humanitarian side of it. I escaped Vietnam because of their help. And one of the vivid memory that I had was that when the C-130 took off, it was kind of circling Saigon, but the back ramp door was open, and there was a serviceman there standing at that ramp looking out. And it had always been in the back of my mind, what's going on? Why was that ramp open? And I after the conference, then I start doing more research on it. And I think I came to find out, maybe I'm disclosing the story that you're going to tell, but I think what I found out was that he was there looking out so that if a rocket from the ground is shooting up at the plane, he would be able to tell the pilot to evade and also shoot the flare out so that hopefully it attracts the missile from hitting the plane. And I mean, these men and women put their lives on the line for us. And I mean, through my journey, I feel like America opened the opportunity for myself to be who I wanted to be. And I just owe so much to this amazing country that, every day I'm thankful to be an American and thankful for the people in the armed forces that keep our country safe.
I think you're spot on, because I talked to a lot of folks that actually worked on the 130s and a lot of veterans that actually flew. I didn't find one that flew out of Saigon. But that was one of those scenarios that you mentioned, was to be able to protect you and the folks that were on that airplane. That was their number one priority, was to protect you and to get you to safety. And that's what our armed forces is all about. I had a brother that served in the Marine Corps in Vietnam, and I had a chance to share your story to him, and he remembers that, because he was over there during that time period, and he's got a son now that's currently serving in the U.S. Embassy. So your story really strikes a chord with our family, and since we've talked, when I'm out of the base and I go talk to the C-130 guys and I'm doing an ergonomic assessment, guess what story I'm telling them? I'm telling the story of my car and how the C-130, brought you out of danger, and your great story is an inspiration. That's why I was so inspired when I heard your story, because my older brother that was a Marine in Vietnam in 1980, through the Catholic Agency in New Orleans, he adopted a Vietnam refugee. And so one of my nephews, Ton, is one of the boat people that came after you left. Mm-hmm. My company president from Service Engineering Services out of Charleston, his family left Vietnam in a boat that was too small, that was on the water for 5 days and 4 nights. And they got to Malaysia, and months later, they got to the United States. So my company president has a connection to your story. Mm-hmm. So when I heard you speak at the conference, it hit home, and it still hits home to me. And I'm just very thankful for your story, because I'm sharing it, and you're spot on when you talk about our military, because even though that 141's retired, the C-17 aircraft did the same thing in Ukraine that it did for you and your family in Vietnam. And so the Air Force is still doing those missions, and it's something that we're very proud of.
Wow.
So
I'm just amazed by all the all the connections in your two stories. You've got two people who grew up in different parts of the world, both became safety professionals, took different paths to get there, and have all these connections, not the least of which is that with nearly 100% certainty, you both have laid hands on the same C-130 and maybe and maybe the same C-141. So it's unbelievable. And Eric, you did something special to commemorate that at the conference. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you brought, Mike?
Yeah, James. First of all, Mike, when I did what I wanted to do, is because you're an inspiration. And I could tell by the way you presented your story, how much the military and how much, that C-130 was a lifeline to you and to your success and to your family. And being a veteran, I always keep a military coin on my person. Fortunately, I had that coin that actually had the Robins Air Force Base anniversary coin, is what we call it, the 80th anniversary coin, and it actually had the C-130 on the coin, and a beautiful design coin. But I just wanted to present it to you, man to man. How this evolved, I think is a wonderful thing because people can hear your story, but it was just an honor to me being an Air Force veteran and knowing that aircraft is still being worked on and is still flying, is still saving lives, and you're a representation of other lives that are going to be saved in the future, that are going to make this country even better than it is today. And so it was an honor to me to give you that token of Robins Air Force Base and the Air Force. And James, I wanted to thank your staff because I didn't know how to get a hold of actually when I couldn't, after you spoke, I couldn't go up front and find you right then because I was kind of emotional. I kind of had to gather myself. And so that's when I went down to your staff at the registration desk and say, hey, how can I get a hold of the guest speaker, Mike? And
then when you told me the story, I got emotional.
Yeah, I think James, when I saw you and you told me that someone was looking for me and he had a gift for me, and there was a build up of like who wants to talk to me and what he's wanting to give me, and it turned out that was just that beautiful, incredible coin that it really moved me because of the human connections, and the coin was something that's tangible that connect back to that fateful day that I left Vietnam when I got on the C-130, and it's that connections, and it represents a milestones in our lives. For me, it was getting on that plane. For Eric, it was working at the Air Force Base and servicing all these planes, military planes. And so it was just a special connection that we had the opportunity to come together and see the intertwine of our lives through these through the planes and the coin and the conference that we were attending. Everything just kind of came together.
Yes, it did. Yes.
Talk about a true ergonomic story, right? Eric told us earlier that ergonomics means helping people. And, both of you just epitomize that, helping others. And the fact that you guys were able to connect, it brings tears to my eyes right now. It's just an amazing story. And thank you both so much for for sharing that story with me. And I'm just honored, honored to have played some small part in knowing about it. And I'm glad we were able to connect the two of you.
It's just a wonderful story and a wonderful connection, and to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, for sharing your story. Outside of your singing at the conference, what an inspiration. Your singing is an inspiration too now. I enjoyed that singing a little bit at the conference, but your story, sir, my hat's off to you. And you have someone in Georgia that is sharing your story and letting the workforce know that, hey, the work that they're doing on that aircraft today made a difference for a friend of mine in California years ago, and it's going to make a difference for somebody else. So you're an inspiration to those guys that are working on that aircraft today, because I'm going to make sure that your story is told.
Thank you, Eric. And when I think back, there's just so many stories like mine. I just fortunate that I had the opportunity to tell my stories, but there are thousands of stories like that for people that came out of Vietnam. My wife escaped from Vietnam on a boat. So she was one of those boat people, and we didn't know each other until we met here in America, so there's so many stories like that. And, just thankful that I had the opportunity to tell the story. But you made a promise to me that if I can get to Georgia, you would give me a tour of the Air Force Base and get me to get on one of these C-130. So I am so looking forward to that.
Roger that. It'll be my honor, and it'd be nice to have somebody video it. I don't know if that will happen or not, but we'll definitely get a photo shoot though of you and me on the plane. So
okay.
Yes,
it sounds like a deal. Well, wow. Well, I'll have to say you both are inspirations to me. What a wonderful story. What two wonderful people. Really glad to have met you both and learned about your histories. And yeah, it's amazing how many connections we have in this life. And I'm so glad you're able to share your passion for safety and your passion for helping others. With that, any thoughts on what's next for each of you in your profession, and how do you want to help others moving forward?
Abbott is continuing to acquire companies. So we get new companies and new products, and part of my job is to help getting these companies up to speed. And so that's going to keep me busy for a while. Also I'm coming up to retirement age. So I'm almost 61 now. So I got 2 to 4 years to go. I'm building up the bench strength for ergonomics for Abbott, and also grooming potential candidates to replace me when it's time for me to move on. So to the next phase of my life. But I mean, I've been doing ergonomics for, since 1988. So it's been a number of years. So it's amazing.
Well, I bet you won't stop doing ergonomics even when you retire, and I'm sure you won't stop helping others.
Right. And one of the things that I plan to do is when I retire is to go back to Vietnam and live there, part of the year, maybe 6 months out of the year, and continue to do charity work. And that's it's ingrained in me that I'm going to live a full life, hopefully, and a full life of helping people. That's
wonderful. How about for you, Eric?
Well, I'm going to do a few more years here at Robbins with the ergonomic program. We're setting examples for the Air Force. We're getting visitors in all the time, and we're just hoping to benchmark our program so it can be applied elsewhere. We're there's a lot of work to be done. And right now I got a team that's very passionate, and we're constantly out helping the workforce. So it's one of those things that I like to retire, but I'm having too much fun, with it. And, so I'm gonna stick it out at Robbins, and then when it's time to go, I'll pass the mantle like Mike was talking. But when I retire, I'm really into history. I'm actually a treasure hunter. That's my big hobby.
Oh, wow.
So I'll be probably going all over doing that. But a big part of my hobby as a treasure hunter is telling stories, because you hear so many wonderful stories across America, right? And now I've got Mike's story to share when I'm out and about. And I don't take that lightly at all. I feel like that is my responsibility as a good steward, not only, in my career doing ergonomics, but when people tell me their life stories, I want to be a good steward and actually share that and make sure that ripple effect that Mike's success started, that it ripples over here into Georgia and places that I go, because everybody needs to be inspired, right? So that's my passion that I'm gonna move forward with.
That's awesome. And I know Mike's story inspired me, and your joint story together inspires me too. And so I can't thank both of you enough for taking time to share this story with others. You guys are true inspirations and just wonderful people to know. So I really, really appreciate all the time and energy that each of you has put into your profession and helping others from a safety perspective, but also inspiring others and building those human relationships, because that's really what it's all about. So thank you both so much.
Thank you, James.
Thank you so much, James. And thank you, the Institute, for having us on this podcast.
You've been listening to Problem Solved, the IISE podcast, a production of the Institute of Industrial and Systems Engineers in Norcross, Georgia. We hope you'll share this and other Problem Solved episodes with your friends and colleagues. Learn more about sponsorship and advertising opportunities, as well as how you can become a member of IISE by visiting podcast.iise.org.